The film opens with a high-stakes scene introducing a seasoned sharpshooter named Sam Lord and his partner and spotter, Ken. From their vantage point, nestled in the rafters of a building across from the city hall, they had a perfect sight line on their target, a corrupt mayor. They were both former British Special Forces soldiers, now earning their keep as contractors for a private military company. As they settled in for the wait, a philosophical conversation unfolded, a way to pass the time and maybe ground themselves before the job. Sam, ever the hard-boiled realist, was convinced that when they died, that was it. The curtain closed for good. But Ken was a true believer, a person of deep faith who was certain that there was something more, a light waiting for them on the other side. Their opposing worldviews were a constant undercurrent to their partnership, a clash of cynicism and hope. Breaking the tension, Ken revealed he had already booked a hotel in Amsterdam for a 2-week getaway. He grinned, figuring they had earned it, and besides, he'd heard the ladies there were a sight to behold. Sam just shrugged, his eyes never leaving the scope. He couldn't bring himself to make any promises. Just then, their target, the mayor, pulled up. He was a real piece of work, running an illegal weapons business on the side. But today he was playing the part of a beloved public servant. He stepped out of his car and put on a public display for the crowd of protesters outside his office, a show of false affection for his wife, as if to say they were just a regular couple. Sam took his shot, a clean line of sight through the scope. But at the last second, the mayor's wife glanced up and her eyes met his, catching a fleeting glint of light on the scope. She instinctively moved to shield her husband. Panic erupted in the crowd, and security began to scramble. Ken's voice was a calm, steady presence in the chaos, urging him to take the shot again, reminding him to stay locked on target. Sam took a second shot, this time aiming for a clear opening, and it was lights out for the corrupt mayor. As they raced to their escape route, they realized they were in a world of trouble. The mayor's security team had them boxed in, and it was a mad scramble to survive. Sam and Ken dove back inside the building and took out a few guards in a chaotic, close-quarters gunfight. As they tried to leave, they found more guards waiting for them outside. It looked like the end of the line, and the police and FBI were on their way. Just as they were about to be cuffed, Sam and Ken pulled off a daring escape, fighting off the remaining guards and then jumping from the roof right into a moving garbage truck. They lay low as the cops and the FBI arrived, finding nothing but dead ends. A few hours later, they were on a plane back to England. Ken noticed Sam was visibly shaken and asked if he was okay. Sam told him that missing that first shot shook him to the core, and he couldn't stop thinking about the mayor's wife. Ken tried to reassure him, telling him not to sweat it because both the mayor and his wife were bad news anyway and had it coming. Moments later, Sam's phone buzzed. It was Tamara, their no-nonsense boss, calling to check on them. Sam gave her the standard rundown. Everything was fine, and the mission was a success. But Tamara wasn't buying it. She knew Sam was shaken up by the mayor's wife's unintended murder. She told him he was likely suffering from a little PTSD and even offered to send a psychologist to check on him. Sam shot that idea down on the spot, telling her he was a pro and could handle it. A few hours later, Sam and Ken landed back in England. Before they went their separate ways, Ken reminded Sam that the hotel in Amsterdam was booked, and Sam still needed to make up his mind. Sam just nodded and walked to his car. Sam's home was in the middle of a dense forest, a quiet place for a guy who made a living from chaos. For the next few days, he settled into a quiet routine, jogging through the woods and chopping firewood. But one day, as he was cleaning his gear, his phone rang. It was Tamara, but he had been ignoring her calls for a while. At the same time, a wolf suddenly appeared at the edge of the woods and stared directly at him. Sam, who was always on edge, raised his rifle. The wolf just stared for a few seconds before disappearing back into the trees. A few minutes later, Sam's phone rang again, and this time, feeling uneasy from the call, he finally picked up. Tamara told him to meet her in Amsterdam. Sam was taken aback and instantly remembered Ken's vacation plans. It seemed like the universe had a dark sense of humor. Sam hopped on a plane and flew to Amsterdam. Ken was waiting for him at the airport and immediately started teasing him. He told Sam that he was beginning to think he had been taken out by the mayor's crew. On their way to the hotel, Ken mentioned that Tamara had also called him, setting up a meeting for the week. They both knew what that meant, another mission. But before they talked business, Ken insisted they had a couple of days to enjoy the city. When they arrived at the hotel, they were greeted by the manager, who escorted them to the top floor. The room was something else, an entire floor with a killer view of the city. The bed was made of silk, and the whole place screamed luxury. Sam was bewildered, wondering why Ken would book such a fancy place. Ken smiled and told him it wasn't his doing. It was a gift from Tamara. The hotel manager, with a flourish, moved to open the grand curtains to reveal the stunning Amsterdam skyline. But a curt word from Sam stopped him cold. He requested that the curtains remain shut. The manager, perplexed, commented on the beautiful sunset outside. But Sam's request was firm. He was still on high alert, his senses honed to a razor's edge from years of living in a world of threats and ambushes. He didn't care about the view. He was too busy scanning every rooftop and window across the way, convinced that the mayor's crew was still on their tail. After the manager left, Sam turned to Ken and confessed his real purpose for the meeting. He didn't want the new mission from Tamara because he was getting out. He was done for good. Ken, his face falling, was a bit choked up by the news. He pleaded with Sam to reconsider, arguing that they were a perfect match, a well-oiled machine. They had been through hell and high water together, and he didn't want to lose his partner. Sam just shook his head, explaining that the death of the mayor's wife was still haunting him. He was a professional, but this time it was different. He was confident that Ken could still be a legendary sniper or spotter on his own, with or without him. In the end, Ken respected his partner's decision. He even admitted that Sam's choice was making him consider retirement too. A few moments later, they heard a knock at the door, and two gorgeous masseuses walked in, sent by Ken. Ken got settled on the massage table, but Sam refused the massage. He just wanted to talk. He asked for their names and where they were from. The one in the red dress, named Mona, was from Mexico, and the other, Lily, was from Ukraine. Seeing Sam's heavy expression, Mona offered to cheer him up with a palm reading. Sam was skeptical but also intrigued. Mona grabbed his hand and after a moment told him that he was destined to live a very long life. But that wasn't all. She looked him in the eye and said that he had a deep and abiding faith in God, even if he didn't know it yet. Ken burst out laughing, a deep rumbling sound that filled the massive room. He told Mona that he would give her a $100 tip if she could pull a crystal ball out of thin air to prove her powers. Mona smiled and, to their surprise, she pulled one out of her bag. Sam and Ken were stunned and laughed uncontrollably. But in the end, Mona admitted that the crystal ball was just a prop to entertain her clients. Just then, a knock on the door broke the tension, and the hotel manager returned with a waitress in tow, pushing a serving cart laden with food and drinks. The manager, with an almost unnerving enthusiasm, went right for the grand curtains. He was determined to open them again, insisting that the nighttime view was a sight to behold and a waste to miss. Sam, his senses on a hair trigger, told him in no uncertain terms to stand down. As the manager's hand still lingered on the remote, a flash of light from a building across the way sent a ripple of pure terror through the room. The sound of a bullet ricocheting off the windows was an instant gut punch. Panic erupted. The waitress, her friendly mask gone, lunged at Sam, and at the same moment, the manager lunged at Ken. The sniper's second shot hit the waitress, dropping her instantly. Sam shoved the manager back, but the man was a lot stronger than he looked. A vicious fist fight broke out between them. As they traded blows, they slammed into a console, and the manager stumbled, landing on the remote for the curtains. The drapes whirred open, leaving the entire penthouse exposed. Meanwhile, Lily and Mona were in a state of shock, frozen in terror. Bullets began to rain down on the room, forcing everyone to dive for cover. Sam managed to get the upper hand on the manager, knocking him out cold. He then frantically yelled at Ken to find their phones. Their only hope of getting out of this alive was to get help. Ken was on the hunt, dodging bullets as he scrambled for cover. He saw Lily's phone on the ground, just a few feet away, but it was a suicide mission to get it. He made a mad dash and a couple of rounds hit the wall next to him. At that moment, Lily, who was in a daze, stood up and was about to be hit. Sam yelled at her to get down and then managed to grab her and pull her to safety, assuring her that everything would be okay. He then yelled at Ken to call Tamara, their only lifeline in this mess. When the call connected, Ken didn't waste a second. He told her they were under fire from a sniper and that the hotel staff was in on it. Tamara, ever the professional, just asked who was behind it. Ken gave her the rundown. She told them to hold tight and that she'd have her team take out the sniper in 20 minutes. Just as they thought they were in the clear, the manager, who was thought to be out cold, stood up and lunged at Sam. But Ken saw it happening and threw a glass bottle at the manager's head, which gave Sam the chance to get away. The manager then charged at Ken, who managed to shove him out the window. Ken stood for a moment, catching his breath behind the cover of the door when a bullet from the sniper hit him in the belly. He let out a gasp, and blood began to seep through his shirt, but he was still breathing. About 10 minutes later, Sam's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Tamara. She told him to come out from behind cover, claiming her team had successfully taken out the hostile sniper. For confirmation, she told Sam to look west, where her people would flash a light as a signal. Sam cautiously peeked out and saw the light, and a wave of relief washed over him. He thought they were in the clear, but before he could make a move, Mona's face was serious. She warned him to stay on his guard. Sam looked out the window again, his eyes scanning the building where the sniper had been, and in a gut-wrenching moment of clarity, he realized the truth. The sniper had been a friendly. He had just been a pawn in her game. He held his phone to his ear, and his voice low and dangerous, asked Tamara what was going on. Her calm, calculating voice sent a chill down his spine. She told him it was all because of his intention to retire. He was her best man, her most valuable asset, and she couldn't let him walk away. Sam was in a rage. He demanded to know how she knew about his plan and why she would target Ken. She calmly explained that the entire hotel room was bugged and that Ken was a casualty of his own loyalty. She knew that Ken would never leave him, so he had to be dealt with. Just as the truth sank in, a barrage of bullets rained down on the room, shattering the windows. The panic was immediate and absolute. Lily was a mess, her fear overcoming her. She broke cover and made a mad dash for the door, but a bullet from Tamara's team hit her in the back. The whole situation went sideways in a flash, and now it was just Sam and Mona against a whole army of assassins. Sam, desperate, made a break for the remote to close the curtains, but it was a dead end. The remote was broken, leaving them completely exposed. Tamara's voice, still calm and chillingly composed, came through the phone, explaining that all the lines and phones in the room were dead. Sam couldn't call for help. The only line that was working was his direct line to her. Sam looked at the CCTV camera in the room and knew she was watching him. In a final act of defiance, he grabbed a coffee mug and smashed the camera to pieces. Tamara's voice took on a new menacing tone, and she swore that she would never let him get out of there alive. Moments later, Sam heard the footsteps of Tamara's people closing in. He told Mona to hide in the back of the room, and he leaped onto a table, grabbing Ken's rifle. He fired, taking down one of the snipers, but the bullets kept coming, and Sam was cornered. However, as a seasoned sniper and assassin, he was a force to be reckoned with. He managed to finish most of the attackers, but just as he was about to get a good shot at the last assassin, a hand reached out and grabbed Mona, holding a gun to her head. Sam was forced to drop his weapon and surrender. Sam was about to drop his weapon when, in a moment of pure shock, Mona's voice called out from the side of the room. He turned to see her standing over the last of Tamara's men, who were all out cold. She calmly asked Sam if they were going to make it out alive. He didn't know, but he was worried about Ken's rifle, which was now in the back of the room. She then gave him a photo of her daughter and told him that if she died, he had to promise to raise her daughter. Soon after, Tamara's assassins barged into the room. Sam, quick and precise, beat almost all of them. But then he was cornered by one last one. Suddenly, the man was shot. It was Mona. A bullet from the sniper's rifle had hit her. She fell to the ground. Sam looked at the scene, devastated and enraged. He made a beeline for her rifle, a fire in his eyes. He took out the last sniper, but he was still trapped. The doors were all locked, and Tamara had the only key. A voice then called out from behind him, and he turned to see Ken lying on the ground. He was barely breathing. Sam picked him up and moved him to the bed. Ken, in a raspy voice, told him that there was only one way out: a swan dive off the roof. Sam scoffed at the idea. There was no way to get off the roof without dying. Just as they were about to give up, a drone controlled by Tamara burst through the window. Sam frantically shot at it, but the thing was made of steel. Meanwhile, in the background, Ken was doing something with a silk bedsheet. Sam spotted a gas canister below the drone and shot at it, blowing up the drone. He then ran over to Ken, but he was gone. He looked at the silk bedsheet and saw that Ken had created a makeshift parachute. He looked out the window and saw Tamara's army climbing the stairs. He grabbed the parachute, gave Ken a final nod, and jumped out the window. The parachute broke midair, and Sam fell. But thankfully, he landed on a dump truck. At that moment, he showed his belief in God, thanking the Almighty for saving his life. Months later, the scene shifts to Dubai. Tamara was on the phone, looking relaxed by the pool. The person on the other end was Sam, who told her that he was coming for her. Tamara, in a calm, confident voice, told him that he was a fool and that he would never find her. Sam smiled and told her that he was already in Dubai and knew where she was. She immediately left in terror. Moments later, Tamara looked at a kid playing a video game in front of the toilet, and then she walked into the toilet. Just then, a janitor came and walked in, and it turned out that the man was Sam, ready to end it all. A gunshot was heard, and Tamara's bodyguard quickly went inside the toilet. Right after that, more gunshots were heard from the toilet, and soon after, Sam came out of the toilet unharmed. She then grabbed the kid, who turned out to be Mona's son. He had kept his promise to her to take care of her daughter.